The president wants money for the wall, and he wants to end the visa lottery system and chain migration. In return, some of the dreamers can stay. That's the president's deal. Joining us now is Brookings Institution senior fellow William Galston. William, welcome to the program. You make the case in an article I just read for a merit-based immigration system. Got it. Does that mean you want to end chain migration as well?
No, it means I want to rebalance our immigration system for the 21st century. We haven't fundamentally altered our framework of immigration policy since the Reform Bill of 1965. There have been momentous economic and social changes in the country, and I think our policies for the 21st century ought to reflect those changes and build on them. I think we have an opportunity now. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt, because I understand exactly what you're saying, and in large part I do agree with you. But what about the other side of the coin? Do you accept that we need border security to stop another wave of immigrants coming in unauthorized? Do we need to end the lottery system because it's just not part of a merit-based system? Do we want to do that side of the ledger as well?
Well, first of all, we certainly need enhanced border security. And I think Democrats and Republicans are in agreement on that point and have been for a very long time. Democrats unanimously voted for an immigration reform package in 2013 that included more money for border security than the president is requesting. So it's just a question of spending that money effectively and efficiently. With regard to the lottery program, first of all, it's not a very big program, and it's generated a lot more heat than its size merits. But secondly, there is no contradiction between a lottery program and a merit-based program, because you can superimpose merit criteria on top of the lottery system. So we can square this circle. Now, with regard to the heart of the matter, and that is the role of family reunification, which is what Democrats call it, or chain migration, which is what Republicans call it. The fact of the matter is that nobody else in the world does immigration the way we do. Nobody gives the weight to family considerations that nobody else does. The United States is a real outlier here. I understand the reasons that have led us to this policy, but it has outlived its usefulness, in my opinion, and there's a good argument for rebalancing away from extended family reunification and toward economic considerations.
Last one. What about anchor babies? Anyone born in America is an American. That's the way it is here. Not necessarily true elsewhere in the world. Would you end the anchor baby concept?
I would not. The principle that if you're born in America, you're an American citizen does much more good than harm, and I think it would be mischievous, all things considered, to alter that principle.
I have to ask you one last question here. The New York Times reports that a number of House Democrats are questioning Nancy Pelosi's leadership. There's a headline in the Times, front page, Pelosi fighting to keep hold on split party, top Democrat may be losing her iron grip. I understand that you were a Democrat operative in the day. Do you think that Ms. Pelosi is losing her grip?
I doubt it very much. She is the best fundraiser in the Democratic Party by far, and especially in a midterm election year, that really counts a lot. There's no question about the fact that she is in the middle of a caucus, a piece of which is to her left and another piece of which is to her right. And she has the difficult task of holding it together, but she's hardly the only political leader to be faced with that kind of balancing act.
I don't think she should have labeled $1,000 bonuses as crumbs, and I don't think she should have said the tax deal was Armageddon. How about you?
I agree with you, and I suspect if you put those questions to her privately, she might well agree that those were not her finest, did not represent her finest hour.
Sir, I think this marks a landmark for the program. I am in a good deal of agreement with someone from the Brookings Institution, and I think that absolutely incredible. William, thanks very much for joining us, sir. Excuse the sarcasm.
You should talk to us more frequently. Who
knows? If you're not careful. William, thank you very much indeed. Great to have you on the show. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.